Hi, I'm Gina-R-Farrar, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast and curator of this amazing global community of women. If you are approaching midlife or are already in the thick of it, welcome home. Please grab a cup of something wonderful and join me for some real talk, practical strategies, and a big dose of sisterhood. Stay tuned. Hi friends, it's Gina here, and this week we are going to be talking about permission to thrive in midlife, redefining what midlife looks like, and flipping the script on aging paradigms. To have this conversation, I have gleaned some of the best guest sound bites from 6 of my past episodes. First up is Barbara Warren. She's the creator of the Perennial Project. She's going to be talking about how finding her mission after 50 has changed and rejuvenated her life.
You know, this journey of mine and a Perennial Project has rejuvenated me in such a way that I'm excited about my age. I'm 56 now. Woohoo! You know, I feel amazing. I'm so proud of the work that I'm doing, that everybody else is doing. I'm, optimistic about the place that this whole movement has out there, the relevance. I feel great physically. I'm so lucky. Like any shoulder, knee, like you deal with it and you move on. You don't stay in that place. I've given myself permission, and that is something that all women need to do. Give yourself permission to thrive, to dream again, to look forward. It's not over. And I was caught up on that. I'm turning 50. I'm done. I can't get a job. Well, screw that. Excuse my language, but like that's not a life sentence that I'm accepting. Like the number now is irrelevant. I say the number, I embrace the number, but it's separate for how I feel and how society has told me to feel and behave. That's not relevant any longer. And women have to believe that. We're not our parents' generation. Our mothers were tossed aside by the time they were 50, wearing muumuus and cutting their hair off and just sort of, becoming fat grandma and fading away. Like that's just not what our society is like. And we need a cultural shift where there is no expectation of women stepping back and not being relevant culturally or in the workplace any longer. Age is not a barrier. It's not real. It's just an abstraction of time.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Permission is a powerful, powerful concept for women. I believe that many, many women are waiting for permission. I can see areas of my own life where I've waited for permission. I'm sure you have seen areas of your life.
100%.
It's very fascinating. I'm not sure what that is about women. I think, like you said, we're used to kind of being that support role. And I believe that stepping into this season of our life, we're shifting from a support role to a more, for lack of a better term, self-centered role, not in a selfish, narcissistic way, but more of a shift of attention. Our kids are grown, our parents may or may not need us, but we have to really be thinking about ourselves, our energy, our mindset, our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health. We have to get to that space where, like you said, how do I feel? And I'm going to give myself permission to give that attention to my passions, my dreams, my goals, the woman that I really have been becoming. And I think that's the realization that women may not be catching is you've been becoming this, Barbara. Everything that you've experienced and known and done has brought you to this place of knowing the woman that you are, and then giving yourself permission to actually step fully into that power.
Yeah.
Right? It's
yes.
a we really don't need anybody else's permission, but we have a tendency to think. So Barbara and I are right now saying to all of you throughout the world that are listening to this, we give you permission. If you're waiting for permission, here it is. Here's your permission.
You take it and you run with it and be whoever you want to be. You know, our personal evolution doesn't stop. And I think, you know, there's sort of this old mindset of, well, you become a grown-up and then you're mature and you're done. Well, yeah, I'm a mature adult, but I'm still evolving and I'm still open to possibility and learning and about, you know, so many topics. And of course, you know, with the internet, you can be learning about anything 24/7. And it's such an enlightening time to be a part of, you know, this society.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to mention is we're also living longer. You know, it's not like we're in our 50s or 60s or whatever, and okay, we're going to, you know, hit 70 something and bye-bye. People are living longer and longer. And in 20 years, it's going to be normal to live to 100 and beyond. So we need to plan our lives, and our finances too, by the way, but we need to plan our lives accordingly. So we really are just about at the halfway mark. You know, we're not on our way down some back nine. We're still in the game, full time, full on. There's a lot to do. So again, love what you said. Everybody give yourself permission to embrace what it is you still want out of life. You are not done. Nothing is over. Nothing has ended. And don't believe it, because it will only take you down the wrong lane. You want to go in the fast lane life going forward. Perpetual motion. Don't stop thinking. Don't stop trying. Don't stop living your life.
So much yes. Don't quit moving forward. Don't stop going after those things that you really want to experience and the person you want to be and the things you want to accomplish. I just love that. Now, our next soundbite comes from Dr. Ellen Albertson. She's sharing about being intentional about your midlife journey and empowering yourself and redefining middle age.
It's more important for us to really come to that space of being mindful of what brings us joy, who we are, where we want to go, taking that knowledge and information and experience that I was talking about, and tapping into that as a resource to make the shifts that we want to make. Everything we do takes time. Time's going to move along anyway, so why don't we just do what we want with the time instead of letting time run us over?
Yeah, that is truly a good point. And I think that we do, I think that you can, as you said, be intentional about how you're spending your time, who you're spending your time with, what you're doing with your life, or you can just let life like drag you along. And I think a lot of women do that, where they're not feeling like I'm actually the author of my existence. And I think that's really where coaching can come in, where you're thinking about what would you love to do? Where do you want, you know, your body and your energy to be? Where do you want your career, you know, your purpose in the world to be? Where do you want your relationships to be? Where do you want your fun to be? And then figuring out, okay, so what am I doing today? How am I spending my time to have more of what I want to have in my life? Being very intentional about who you're spending time with, what you're actually doing. I have a lot of my clients actually keep track for a week or two of every single thing they do and write down next to it, when are you energized? Like, where's your energy level? So if you're like doing X, Y, and Z, rate your energy level, rate how much you're in flow. So are you in the moment? Are you really lost in what you're doing? Or are you, you know, thinking about what you're going to watch, you know, on Netflix tonight? So thinking about what are the changes that I can make, and really empowering yourself to be the author of your existence. And I think a big piece of that too is working on your relationship with yourself.
That's absolutely true. The most important relationship we have is with ourselves and our self-talk, because, you know, we say things to and about ourselves that we would never say to another person. And if we did say them to other people, we would have no friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Getting into the habit of speaking those life-giving words, getting into the habit of speaking those words that are full of joy and gratitude. And I think one other thing, besides not just focusing on ourselves and our joy and our happiness, but it's, I think, reaching out to other people and being kind, smiling at other people, giving random compliments to other women, really building that sense of shining our own light. If our light has probably been under a bushel, it's probably been dimmed, it's probably maybe the light bulb needs a little change, maybe we need to get a little more wattage in our life. And it really is a partnership between our own intentional living in terms of us inwardly, but there's also an outward component that allows us to become a light in the world around us. And that brings an incredible amount of joy and purpose when we connect to other people and we genuinely look at another person, whether we know them or not, and say, oh, that dress looks fantastic on you. Oh, I love that lipstick on you. You just have the best smile. All of those things, finding joy in your day could be as simple as genuinely looking someone in the eye and giving them a compliment or saying hello to them. When you're in a store and they have the name, calling people by their name. Think about how we feel when we're being called by name, Then midlife is a lot about finding our voice again, I think, and a lot of that identity comes from our name, who we believe we are, what we've experienced. And so there's a little bit of a dance between not getting too stuck with figuring our own stuff out and also extending our hand and our care and our compassion to the world around us. I think those two things together can make midlife that much richer.
And I think as we do more of that, as we connect more with other women and compliment them, and we can actually shift the way that people are perceiving midlife. That's a big part of my calling is, when you put midlife in Google, what comes up is crisis. You cannot put midlife without crisis. And when you put it in a thesaurus, you get middle age and the wrong side of 40. And it's so bizarre because it was one psychologist came up with this idea of midlife crisis, I think probably in the 60s or 70s. And it was in relation to men and men having midlife crisis. And we have this idea that I have to go through this crisis. Now, I think we do go through sort of this caterpillar to butterfly thing. And that chrysalis can be very, very difficult. When the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, it literally digests itself. So it has these managerial cells which stay the same, but it literally creates this acidic goo and digests itself and then emerges as the butterfly. So there is some transformational that's really hard, but you can come out at midlife and say, gee, I really love my life because I've made these changes, because I've transformed myself and my life. And I think that piece where all of us can hold each other and create this sort of new vibe around midlife. And I'm seeing some slow changes. I'm seeing, I was watching a movie and Nicole Kidman had a really juicy part. Renee Zellweger had another juicy part. I'm reading Gilbert's new book, the woman who wrote, Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love, has just come out with a new book that's all about, the sexy time in the 40s. And I think the woman was, at midlife for pieces of it. So I think we're shifting that and really transforming. And a big piece of that is seeing other women, as you said, and acknowledging them, seeing that, you look great today. I really appreciate your friendship, having more friends at midlife. I know myself, I have so many beautiful friends. I'm in a really groovy new relationship that I love, but I'm realizing that my partner doesn't meet all my needs. And I have other women who fill in all of these other bits and pieces, who are people that I love dearly, that I relate to. So I think that midlife friendship and that friendship that you have with yourself, when you start to notice that you're having this negative self-talk, you have to pause that and I work a lot with women in sort of transforming that self-critical voice to a self-compassionate voice that says, you're fine, you're okay, you'll get through this, I believe in you, I love you, I care about you, I want you to really enjoy your life to the fullest.
It's such a powerful thought to think about the relationship that we have with ourselves and really giving ourselves permission to move forward in confidence in our midlife years, and just how much we have to offer during this season. And with that in mind, the next soundbite comes from Judy Holland. She's talking about reinvention and how to identify your interests and your midlife talents and the importance of building relationships during this season.
It's interesting how there are clues in our lives. sometimes we feel like we have to stay with the same thing. But the key with reinvention is you don't have to do the same thing, but the clues are in who you've been and what you've done.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely. So you look back. This is what I say. Look back to your childhood. I mean, Gina, I told you I was sitting down at 4 and 6, with the dinner bell ringing and my mother mad at me that all the other 4 kids had already arrived at the dinner table. And I was writing things. And so I look back to that and I realized that's just something that makes sense out of my world. It might not be, it isn't for lots of other people. I don't want to put a model airplane together. I'm not 3-dimensional, but you look back into your youth and figure out, what those things were. Go look at a magazine rack and see which subjects, if you were on a 21-hour flight, which subjects would you pick out if you were trapped on an airplane? What are you interested in? These are all little, revisit your path, let your internal GPS guide you, see what lit you up, and start making a list of things that make you come alive, because I promise you there is some way to overlap that with what the world needs, which then brings all kinds of great feelings and interactions and opens doors you didn't even know existed. There are many people that go out and volunteer in an area they're interested in. They can play the French horn. They work with some sort of inner city group in the French horn, and before they know it, they've got a job or a new avenue or a new band. But it's really about taking those steps and having the courage to take those steps, but don't take them recklessly. Focus internally, figure out what those steps should be. I have a friend with a book out. She's a big Buddhist and spent a lot of time in monasteries, and she is a big advocate. I've started doing it, of journaling to bring clarity to these ideas. Maybe you wake up in the morning and you write a little bit about what's your intention, what do you want to do for the day. And that is useful for me and for a lot of people, for just bringing clarity to what you're doing. But again, I think the overarching thing here, now that we're not in our 30s, we're not scrambling to figure out what our first career is and everything, is to really look at the greater good. Because I'm promising you, this is not about being a broke do-gooder. If you look at the greater good, you can find a way to overlap your talents with what the world needs. And then there's an amazing place for you. There is something transcendent out there. And I'm actually working on a speech on this whole concept, because I think it's, people might think they can't afford to do it, or they don't have time to do it, or I'm not a do-gooder, but it's really not about that. It's about meaning and fulfillment and how we get there.
You talked about journaling to clarify ideas. The neuroscience is behind that. It unclutters the mind when you're using your hand, not typing, but you literally do pen to paper and you write things out. Wow. It's a mental process. So it helps the mind to take the information and begin to put it into place. It's actually when we walk.
Yes, I mean, walking to
the mind into another place, and all of a sudden ideas start to flow and that sort of a thing. So there's things we can do that are physically and biologically connected to help us work through. Because if we think, but we don't do anything physically to work those thoughts out in a reinvention process, we're just going to feel overwhelmed.
Right.
If we can, I always had this analogy that our thoughts are like birds in our mind, right? Our mind is the cage. And when we don't control our thoughts, it's like the birds have gotten out of the cage and they're just flying around, feathers and poop everywhere, right? And so how do we get the birds back into the cage? We have to find a way to control those thoughts. And journaling is a great way to do it, because it gets them back in order, and they don't have to come out in order. This is the thing about journaling. People think you have to write volumes, but journaling is one of those things where you might find yourself saying something on paper that you haven't even realized has been mulling around in your brain, because it's been buried under all of the other things that we have in our head. So I definitely agree wholeheartedly with the journaling, because it is a physiological handwriting to paper activity that does things for the brain.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then walking, and that's another thing that I've got a couple of sections on in my book. And again, there's research on walking and walking in nature.
Mhm.
And I find it's the same thing. I've also written some fiction, and I will write myself into a corner and be so frustrated, or, just upset that a family member's not well, or, and I have a Great Dane. I have a 155-pound Great Dane, and I might take her for 3 miles. And that's very different. I spent most of my life, distance running, 4 to 6 miles a day. But that's a really different thing, Gina. That's huffing and puffing. It's not a collection. You don't notice the leaf on the tree because you're making sure you don't slip on the branch. And so walking is something that I do now. And I was totally shocked to look at research and find out that you actually can burn the same calories in, walking but you got to walk a lot farther. But still, it's a wonderful thing, and it puts my universe in order, and I tend to get ideas for things that I'm writing or things that I want to do, and it just brightens my mood. And it's so simple, and it doesn't cost anything. Couples walking together, that's a huge thing. It's a tradition in a lot of Europe, and especially in Switzerland. People go hiking and walking, and you just see pairs of two everywhere walking. And I spoke to a researcher who moved to Switzerland for a while and started doing the same thing with his wife. And the other thing that he did was unplug the phone unless they needed it for navigation. Because then a spouse gets upset. If my husband keeps checking his text when I'm trying to tell him something and we're walking, that's upsetting to me. So if you can turn that off and just interact, thoughts and ideas just kind of unwind slowly as you're walking. So that's another one of the magic things. One other thing that I think is huge, and I've done a chapter on, is friendships. Second half of life friendships, cultivating them, maintaining them, which is so huge, and finding new ones, the right ones, the ones with a lot of soul per square inch. And that's a huge thing. People tend to prune, and I found a lot of research on this. They tend to weed out and prune their friendship circles as they get older. But if that makes sense, Gina, I don't know about you. When I was in my 20s, I'd go places with almost anybody just because I thought that if they were different and interesting and I could learn something from them. But now I need people that are a lot more on my wavelength if I'm going to spend any real time with them. You can find those things, new friendships, by simply being authentic to what your interests and passions are. And if you go do those things, which might be photography or a biking group or a cooking class, anything like that, you find people with common interests. Those are people you'll connect with. And then the connection to them. There's a wonderful psychologist at Yale, Margaret Clark, that I've interviewed, and she says that men sometimes make these new friendships but have trouble maintaining them because for sociological reasons, they're not as good at revealing vulnerabilities. So women connect. And if I go find somebody through a photography gig or, whatever, maybe you like to collect wildflowers, or I don't know, all the hobbies people would have. You even like to go hiking. You find people that like to do what you want to do, but you can't just present sunshine and light. I mean, I'm not saying that you're looking for someone like a therapist or a counselor. You don't want to just dump things on people, but by sharing vulnerabilities, you connect with new people like that. And there's a huge world of people out there, and there's an epidemic of loneliness in this country that's causing so many problems. It causes early mortality and depression. So that is a huge thing that I say. And then I've made a point to look up and pull back old friends that live far away, that are so important in my past. And I really make a point, old friends and relatively new friends, I really reach out. I really make a point, if I'm going to be in some area, to overlap, even it's just for a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. And it makes all the difference in the world. It's huge to me.
Wow. That reminder about the power of relationships in this season of life is so great. I don't know about you, but for me, this season of life has seemed busier and more complex than any other season of my life. And I too have been trying to work on maintaining and building my current relationships and then investing in other relationships that are coming into my life that are helping me gain, empowerment and understanding and wisdom and community in a way that it's just so helpful in this season of life. There's something about linking arms with other women. And when they're the right kind of relationships, they inspire us to tap into those talents and those skills that we have. They identify those things in us, and it really does help us move forward and live that empowered midlife. Now, this next conversation is with Dr. Frida Birnbaum, and the discussion is around perspectives on aging. What is old and what is age appropriate, and who gets to decide?
It's true. And, women who make changes make history. Similar to you, I've had women around the world calling me, but they've called me for a different reason. They want to start what they're doing later in life as well. And they're always calling sort of for permission to do that. Because, you have to really be the one in front. You really have to take that lead in order to make those changes and not to be afraid of that. They want children later in life. They want their careers later in life. Should they get married later in life? Of course, all these things. Move. Do whatever it is that you feel that is appropriate for you at the time. I had children later in life and way later in life. Do you know what age I was when I had children? Do you know about me?
I believe that you had children possibly at 60 or your late 50s.
Is that possible?
Anything is.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And I started a career later also in the media that's really fickle about looks and age around that age. And I've been on television, of course on the radio, sometimes a couple times a day, without any problems. So here I'm saying I've always sort of been like 10 years ahead of my time, but women are treading into these places on their own. So we need to, as you say, set the trend and set the pace, and don't look at where you're supposed to be. Look at where you want to be. Look at my age. I went into the media. I have a show once a week, it's called America's Trends, a little segment there. I've been doing this and I keep doing this, and people have to remind me what age I am. But it's a good reminder to have role models that are not selling products, that are not out there looking glamorous as they can be. I can't speak. They are themselves. I'm getting excited, so I'm talking over myself. They are themselves. When I wrote a book, my editor came at the door, and it was winter, and I was wearing stretch pants and boots and a sweater, and I was comfortable, right? What else do you wear? A house dress? My mother wore a house dress at 40. But
no.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that has changed. So she comes in and she says to me, "Boy, you still wear that?" And I said, "Why not? I'm comfortable." And I'm thinking, not only do I still wear that, when I had my older children, my younger children, I was older, a man came from Germany to interview me about age and children. They were very excited about this. And he said to me, "Where's the old lady?" So they expected really an old-looking, shriveled-up person. And I said to him, "I guess I'm the old lady." So I thought to myself, so, when you think about that and you think about where we are and what we see as old, is really not that. So what is old? Is it in your 80s? Is it in your 90s? Women are asking me, what is old? They're calling me. I'm telling you, they've called me from Africa, from Russia, you name it, Germany, Israel. They're calling me to find out if they are going to be laughed at. if they are going to be strange, if they are no longer going to be credible for what it is they are doing. We are at a time that is so enlightening that people are actually looking to us for who they are supposed to be. How great is that? There is no one telling us, and not only is no one telling us, but we are setting new rules for generations behind us. And that is what's so exciting about it. It's a very revolutionary time for women like you and myself and these other women who are self-thinkers.
I love that. We're setting new rules for the generations behind us. I totally agree with that. And in order for that to take place, that means you and I have to stop waiting for permission, and we have to take up the mantle of facing ageism and recognizing that we get to choose how we view that piece of information about ourselves. How many things are there that define us? Our height, our hair color, our eye color, our age, our weight, our roles in life as a wife, as a mother, as a friend, as a sister. All of these little pieces come together, and then we find ourselves getting stuck in this idea of how old we are. We're so much more than our age. We're so much more than our appearance. And where did we sign the contract that we have to be a certain thing at a certain age? I don't remember signing a contract.
You know, you're right. You know, my patient the other day said to me, you know, Dr. Birnbaum, you don't act your age. You don't look your age. You don't have the energy for someone that's supposed to be your age. You're so much more youthful. And I said to her, well, who gave you the definition of what certain numbers are supposed to be?
Yes.
Forget about that definition, because women live in fear of aging just to look back that they weren't that old. You know, when you look ahead 10 years from now, you look back at where you are, you say, hey, it's really not a bad deal what it is you're supposed to be doing. Not only that, you know, when you talk about friends and you talk about relatives, you don't even have to do that. You don't have to have that Thanksgiving meal. You don't even have to have, now this is going to sound harsh, your daughter-in-law over if you don't think she's being nice to you, or your mother-in-law, or anybody that you feel is toxic to you. There's no more have-tos. That's the only thing. The only thing that you have to is to be true to what you see around you, to be a good person, to be kind, to be loving, to be caring, to be happy for other people. That's something that's innate, because physiologically you will feel better if you do have those qualities. But people around you, if you don't feel better about yourself after you're with them, you shouldn't be with them. Only the ones that support who you are. That's the time. And I'm saying life begins really at any age. And the reason I said 60 is because 60 has seemed to have represented going down, but it's really not. And it's just the fact that if we could think that way, we would save so many years of fear and being hesitant about making the right decision, because the only one that can make that right decision is you. Nobody knows you except yourself. The minute I stop being connected and I ask someone's input, forget it. I lose that moment and I lose the insight of what's most important. So what's really important is when you have a feeling, you act on it. And when you act on it, life progresses and you keep moving. Nothing's horrible going to happen. Failure helps towards success. That's a very important message.
You know, one of the invigorating things about that conversation was the fact that Dr. Frida actually had her children at 60 years old. So when she says, oh, why not? What is old? She has lived that with her life. And I love how she puts forward that call that you and I in our midlife can be role models, that we can be setting new rules for the people following us, and how revolutionary that is. And I love the question, who gave you the definition of what certain numbers are supposed to be? If there's something that you want to do, move toward it. Age is nothing but a number. Now, with that in mind, our next soundbite is from Dr. Carla Manley, and she's talking about flipping the script in our paradigm on the ages and stages of life. And she asks the question, what is our prime?
Why do we do that? Why do we give age so much power?
I think we give it so much power. I mean, there's so much here, Gina. I mean, there's so much. But I think one of the reasons we give it so much power to the negative, right?
Yes.
Is because we live in a culture, in a society that has come to prize youth. It prizes youth in a way that other cultures, and way historically, we did not do it. We honored the maiden, first the virgin, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, the older, the grandmother. There was a wisdom there to be had. In our culture, we honor the virgin and maybe the maiden, right? But the other aspects, no, we don't want her. We don't want her once she's past her prime, so to speak. That's the mantra. And this is where it gets scary for women of all ages. What is our prime? Is our prime 15? And some people will tell you it is. There are some, clearly, men and women out there who think that a girl at 15 or 16 is the best and everything else is downhill. That's pretty scary if we look at it that way. Instead of saying, wait, there are stages in a woman's life journey. Every stage is beautiful. Every stage is valuable and has something to offer. And if we get stuck on honoring only one stage, whether that's 18, 20, 25, 16, then we're missing the beauty and the wonder of all of these other stages. And how unfortunate is that? And so I think that's one piece. I think the other piece is we live in a culture that is very externally oriented, very much looking at the facade, the right house, the right car, the right wrinkles, which means no wrinkles. Your face is just sitting there like it can't move, right? And your cheeks don't move and you're barely, your lips move, right? And that's okay, for somebody who wants that look, that's okay. But we don't all need to have that look in order to be lovely. Mm-hmm. And so in an externally oriented society, if we have one definition of beauty, which I believe in our culture, where we are with that right now, is slim, of a certain height, whatever that is, certain weight, athletic but not too athletic, feminine but not too feminine, and petite but not too petite, right? All of these things that make up this perfect woman. And, ideally you're somewhere around stuck at 19 years old. That is a really difficult image and absolutely inappropriate image for the rest of us to try to be living up to or to model. So my idea with Aging Joyfully is for us to be able to look at health in a different way, beauty in a different way, and say what we want to focus on. Yes, we want to look pretty in the mirror for ourselves. Whatever that face is, right? Whatever the hair color is. You like gray, go gray. You like, very sort of stiff face that doesn't move, hey, go ahead, go for it. But that doesn't mean that there is only one way of looking beautiful. And so what is most important to me, Gina, and I believe this is the successful way because I see it in my practice, when we have beauty on the inside, that beauty, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, beyond, radiates. But we focus on the external, and I think that's such a mistake.
You use the word wonder, and I love that word because there's a childlike curiosity to the word wonder. It opens up a perspective on life that has a sense of excitement and hope, right? We can wonder at the things that we've learned and the women that we've become and the experiences that we've had and how we bring those forward now into our relationships and the richness. We can wonder at the life we've lived and wonder at how we've evolved as women individually. And like you said, those internal beauties, those internal qualities that have been developed, and just really kind of, almost in my mind, you step back and you look at yourself almost like you're taking like a 360-degree view of a 3D object, right? And you
Yes.
look at your life and value with wonder what you've endured, accomplished, experienced, and give honor to the journey you've been on, and know that it doesn't end because you had a birthday.
Absolutely. And I love how you're looking at it through that lens of wonder, because as I wrote Aging Joyfully, I had to be very careful, neurolinguistically, to make, I hope that any reader does not find the word youthful in there, in the context of, let's try to look more youthful, right?
The fountain of youth. This book is the fountain of youth. We're not going that route, right?
Right. No. It is about looking radiant.
Mm.
And I think that really dovetails beautifully with the word wonder. Because when we're looking at our lives through the lens of wonder, of curiosity, of hope, of promise, then everything shifts. Everything shifts because we're lighter, we're more radiant. If, however, I've heard, 20, 30-year-olds in my office say, I'm afraid I'm not relevant anymore. I'm afraid I'm too old. I'm afraid I'm past my prime. And I'm looking and saying, wait a second, that's a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
As me in my 50s, hey, I'm not worried about my relevance. I'm worried that I might not, and I'm not even worried about it. Hey, if I have 10 more years on the planet or 20, hey, whatever it is. But there's so much to be relevant about when you're passionate, when you're curious, when your eyes are filled with wonder. If you believe in your life and in your power, you'll always be relevant, right? So,
right.
And I think, going back to the idea of looking at aging as a process. And as you were speaking, I wrote down a word because you were talking about honoring, that knowing that each stage of life, again, kind of going back to the mythological sense of these stages of the virgin, the maiden, the mother, and then the elder or the crone, right? Each stage has its gifts.
Yes.
And if we look at each stage as a box to open that has these various gifts inside, and look at those gifts with wonder, certainly they're not the same gifts we had when we were in our teens. But shoot, who wants those anyway? You couldn't get me to go back to my teens if you paid me, right? Or my 20s, 30s, or my 40s, right? Well, maybe my 40s, because I was really changing and growing then. So that's the idea, is let's look at the paradigm. And I talk about this in Aging Joyfully as a jumping off point. Self-ageism. It is a term that I coined in working with the book. How much do we put ourselves in a box of aging ourselves and saying, I'm too old for this. I'm too wrinkled. I'm too this. How much are we doing that as women, no matter what the chronological age is?
Don't you just love the way that Dr. Carla brings forward this conversation with such grace about the ages and stages of life? And really, I've often said, where in the world did I sign a contract saying that I was going to look 20 years old for the rest of my life? I'm pretty sure I've never seen the contract and I've never signed the contract. And I just love the idea of giving each other that support and empowerment to allow ourselves to be the age we are, to age gracefully with confidence and that inner beauty, and freeing ourselves from those external confines of what our quote prime or peak is, and knowing that each day we can hit our peak, we can be in our prime just by the way we choose to live our lives. So, man, that was a great conversation. And for our last soundbite, we're going to be hearing from Arlene Krantz. Her message in this soundbite is about stepping out and trying new things no matter what your age. She really has this message of tapping into trusting yourself.
All it knows is what it hears. So when some question comes up, that old message will pop up again. And then it's like, oh, here comes that message again. I can't. Geez, if I thought I couldn't, I don't know what my life would be like. I can't even imagine what my life would have been like if I didn't pay attention to wanting more, to pay attention, to listen to myself, to be willing and brave and bold to step into something that was brand new, that I didn't know. Even getting a job, I didn't know. But I said, sure, I could do it. And I was great at it. They loved me. You learn as you go along. You don't have to know everything. You have to know enough to get started, and the rest will fall into place. And if it doesn't, you learn. Every time I listen to somebody that runs multi-billion-dollar corporations and people that are so successful, and they all say the same thing. Listen, it wasn't perfect. I made mistake after mistake after mistake. And that was one of the things that inspiration that I would put up next to me. How many times did Edison try to invent the light bulb until he scored? How many times do you wonder would Steve Jobs try to create a computer and failed so many times? How many times did all these different people try? At least they tried. Try. You have to at least try. You have to at least give yourself a chance and say, I could do it.
Yeah, because if we don't try, we won't know. In other words, if I don't try, then what I've said about myself is true. Like if I say I can't, and then I don't try, the I can't is true. The only time that I can make that story different is by doing something different, by trying something different. And we don't have to be a different person. I think I want to bring that out. People feel like, oh, I'm not, quote, that kind of person, right? Maybe they've always been that quiet woman who's always taken the back seat, doesn't put herself first, doesn't take care of herself in the way that she should. It doesn't have to be a podcast, a YouTube channel, writing a book. It can be anything that a woman has in her heart to do. It could be learning to quilt. It could be learning to cook. It could be starting a women's group in your community talking about your favorite hobby, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't have to be the thing that, quote, can make you famous or is so public like what you and I do. I think the point of the conversation is, what is the thing you want to do? Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how many people are going to see that thing, but what would fill your cup and make you feel like your life is vibrant and that you're contributing and that you're growing and that you're not just letting life pass you by. And so I think for a lot of women, a journaling activity of who am I? What do I love to do? What's something I would love to do? Even if no one else in the world ever saw it, heard it, or whatever. What's the very first thing that you think, well, I always thought it would be fun to learn to sing or play the piano or decorate, recover a chair. Like literally, I want women to think, because you and I are on the same kind of track and personality and the things that we're pursuing. It's very public. It's very, using our voice. But I want women to understand that the permission, if you need it, Arlene and I give you full permission right now to live your life however you want to live it. But it needs to be authentic to you. And it doesn't have a qualifier of what's worthy and what's not worthy. It's whatever it is that lights your fire.
Exactly. And it's interesting because, when you talked about that, I remember when my kids were little, and again, we didn't have much money, and I had to decorate the room. So I went and got decorating books. I'm like, taking little pom-poms, putting around the lampshade, matching colors up, just having fun and accomplishing something. And I don't have much of an artistic ability. There's a part of me, I wish I was an artist, but never's happened. I tried my best, not me. I thought I was good, but no one else did, but whatever. But but my art is something different. My art is helping women make money and create their businesses and step into their power. But there's so many things and it's true. There's like, sometimes, I wish, like, I want to take an acting class. One day I woke up years ago and said, they have the New York Film Academy. I'm going to go do that. Now, I know I'm not a filmmaker, but I wanted to experience it. So how many things out there to even experience, to say, wow, I always wanted to try that. Am I brave enough to go do that? And there's so many night classes you can take and so many places you can go to learn new things that would spark, bring some spark into your life. And that's yours. That is yours that you did for yourself without asking permission from anybody else. Actually giving yourself permission to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Giving yourself permission to say, you know what? I always wanted to take it. My friend is taking, my sister, who was a teacher, all of a sudden she's became an artist. She's taking art classes and she's loving it. She does it for herself. She doesn't do it for anybody else. And I can't believe how good she is. It's like she had this thing inside of her to go do art. And she's 74.
Isn't that an incredibly inspiring story that a woman started painting at 74? And I love how Arlene talks about bravery and being bold and being game to try. The question, am I brave enough? The answer, yes. What can you learn to do? Give yourself permission to expand your horizons, to expand your skills, and try something new. It doesn't have to be the thing that you do forever, but it can bring you joy in the moment. And one thing will lead to another thing, and you can just enrich your life. And I just love it because Arlene is a woman in her 70s, and she is vibrant and living life with this can-do attitude. And it's so awesome. I want to thank you guys so much for sitting with me today and enjoying these women and their perspectives on midlife and aging and the paradigms that we have around age. I hope it has been an encouragement to you. And if you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 191, I will have links to the past podcast episodes with each one of these ladies and links to check them out and what it is that they put out into the world as well. While you're there, please leave your name and email address and join my tribe. I send out periodic encouraging emails. You can also find me on Instagram as gina_r_farrar, and I'm building the @Feminine Roadmap. So please head on over there and follow me. Please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. Let's continue to build this amazing global community of women, shifting the paradigm around aging and leading the charge to a greater, more empowered mindset toward what it means to be a woman in midlife. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to sharing more with you again next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.